Invisibility was survival. 3 years working at the Sovereign Room had taught Amara Hayes that lesson with brutal efficiency. Rich men didn't see waitresses. They saw furniture that occasionally refilled wine glasses and cleared plates. Extensions of the silverware. Present but unseen. That invisibility had kept her alive. It had kept her employed despite a background that couldn't withstand scrutiny. It had kept her daughter fed and her secrets buried. But tonight, invisibility was about to shatter. The Sovereign Room occupied the top floor of the Sterling Tower in Chicago's Loop. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like a kingdom spread below. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. White tablecloths so crisp they looked like snow. The kind of place where senators dined with CEOs and deals worth millions were sealed over appetizers. It was exactly the kind of place Amara couldn't afford to draw attention. November rain hammered against those impossible windows, turning the city into a watercolor of light and darkness. Inside, warmth pooled beneath soft lighting. The air tasted expensive, aged wine, truffle oil, the particular scent of money that had been money for generations. Amara moved through the dining room with practiced efficiency. Black vest buttoned over a white shirt. Hair pulled into a bun so severe it erased personality. Posture differential enough to signal service without servility. At 28 she'd perfected the art of being seen only when needed. Her feet ached in the regulation black Oxfords. Her daughter Zoe was home with Mrs. Park, the Korean grandmother next door who watched her for rates Amara could barely afford. Zoe would be asleep by the time Amara's shift ended. Bathed and storied and tucked in by someone else. The guilt sat in Amara's chest like a stone. But guilt was a luxury. Every hour she worked here was an hour toward the paralegal certificate hidden in her apartment. Every tip went into the envelope beneath her mattress, slowly accumulating toward a future where she could use her real credentials again. Where she wouldn't have to hide. She just had to stay invisible. Stay quiet. Stay safe. Then she saw the contract. Table 12 was always trouble. Private dining room in the back. Reserved for guests who valued discretion over atmosphere. Tonight it seated 6. Amara had drawn the assignment 2 hours ago when Marcus, the floor manager, pulled her aside with unusual gravity. Table 12 tonight, Amara. Impeccable service. Absolute discretion. We clear. She'd understood. Some tables required more than skill. They required silence. Now, as she entered the private room carrying the first course, hamachi crudo with yuzu and microgreens, she catalogued the players. 5 men in expensive suits. 1 woman in Chanel. All Korean except for 2 white men who had lawyer written across their smug faces in invisible ink. And at the head of the table, back to the wall with sightlines to both entrance and windows, sat Kang Seo-jun. Amara's breath caught. She knew exactly who he was. Anyone who worked in high-end service in Chicago knew who he was. 36 years old. Heir to the Kang family empire that controlled half the city's underground economy and a concerning percentage of its legitimate businesses. His father had built the empire from nothing. Seo-jun had made it untouchable. He looked like violence sculpted into human form. Sharp jawline. Black hair swept back from a face that balanced brutal elegance with something ancient and uncompromising. Charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than Amara's annual rent. Ink crawled up his neck from beneath his collar. Traditional Korean imagery that marked him as both old world and dangerous. But it was his eyes that made her pulse stutter. Dark. Relentless. Always calculating. They swept the room in one comprehensive scan that catalogued exits, threats, opportunities. The gaze of someone who'd learned young that survival meant seeing everything first. Amara set down plates with steady hands, her professional mask locked in place. The men barely acknowledged her. Good. Invisible was exactly where she needed to be. As she poured water, their conversation created a low-frequency backdrop. Carefully coded references to market positioning and asset consolidation that anyone with legal experience recognized as corporate predation dressed in business casual language. She'd heard these conversations before. Back when she'd worked at a law firm instead of serving food to lawyers. The contract is straightforward, one of the white men was saying. Thomas Reeves. Senior partner at Dalton and Cross. Amara recognized him from the reservation. Standard merger agreement. Kang Industries absorbs Chin Logistics. You get their shipping networks. They get a generous payout and retain positions for key personnel. Generous for whom? The question came from the Korean woman. Late 40s. Sharp eyes. Seo-jun's aunt, Amara guessed based on the way she sat to his right. Position of trust. Everyone benefits. Reeves smiled. Oil slick and practiced. That's the beauty of a well-structured merger. Seo-jun said nothing. He was reading the contract. 30 pages of dense legal text spread across the table. His fingers moved down each page with methodical precision. Not skimming. Actually reading. Amara returned to her station near the door, ready to respond but otherwise invisible. Except she wasn't watching the diners. He was watching the second lawyer. David Park. Junior associate according to the reservation notes. He sat too still. His hands rested flat on the table but tension radiated from his shoulders. His eyes kept flicking to Seo-jun then away. Like he was waiting for something. Like he was afraid of something. Amara had spent 3 years in corporate law before everything fell apart. She'd proofread hundreds of contracts. Witnessed dozens of signings. She knew what normal looked like. This wasn't normal. Park's briefcase sat at his feet. Standard leather. Nothing unusual. But he kept glancing at it. Quick, nervous looks that his senior partner didn't notice because Reeves was too busy pontificating about quarterly projections. Then Park reached down. The movement was subtle. Practiced. His hand disappeared into the briefcase for perhaps 2 seconds. When it came back up, it held a pen. Mont Blanc. Expensive. He set it on the table near Seo-jun's contract pages. Casual. Unremarkable. Except Amara saw the residue. Tiny. Nearly invisible. A faint oily sheen on the pen's barrel that caught the light wrong. Her legal training kicked in before her conscious mind caught up. She'd seen that before. During a case about forged signatures and identity theft. The firm had brought in an expert who'd explained contact poisons. Substances that absorbed through skin on contact. Not fatal. But enough to make someone pliable. Suggestible. Compliant enough to sign documents they wouldn't normally sign. Amara's eyes snapped to the contract. To the pages Seo-jun was touching with bare hands. To the pen Park had positioned exactly where Seo-jun would reach for it when ready to sign. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't a merger. This was a trap. She could walk away. Should walk away. Let whatever corporate warfare this was play out without her. Men like Kang Seo-jun didn't end up in situations like this by accident. He'd earned enemies. Maybe he deserved this. But Amara looked at him, really looked and saw something unexpected. Exhaustion in the set of his shoulders despite the perfect posture. The way his fingers pressed against his temples for a fraction of a second before returning to the contract. Like he had a headache he couldn't quite shake. He looked human. Vulnerable. And she thought about the pen. About what would happen if he touched it. If he signed documents while chemically compromised. If he woke up hours later to find his empire signed away to people who'd drugged him to get it. Amara's body made the decision before her mind caught up. She grabbed the wine service from the sideboard. A 2015 Brunello di Montalcino. $800 bottle. Already decanted into crystal that reflected light like liquid rubies. She approached the table, her hands steady despite the terror screaming through her nervous system. Gentlemen, her voice hit that professional sweet spot. Pleasant without warmth, attentive without personality. May I offer a toast wine while you finalize the agreement? Excellent idea. Reeves gestured expansively. Nothing seals a deal like good wine. Amara moved around the table, pouring with practiced precision. She filled Reeves' glass. Parks. The ants. Each measured pour that left exactly enough for one more person. Then she reached Seo-jun. He sat with the contract spread before him, pen, that poison-laced pen, resting inches from his right hand. Amara tilted the decanter and let it slip. The crash was spectacular. Crystal shattered against the table edge. Wine exploded across white linen in a crimson bloom. It cascaded over the contract pages, turning 30 pages of dense legal text into an illegible mess of bleeding ink and burgundy stains. The tainted pen disappeared under the flood. Documents curled and warped. Signatures' spaces dissolved. Oh my God. Amara's horror was genuine even if the accident wasn't. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Chaos erupted. Reeves jumped back, wine splashing across his shirt. The aunt stood, napkin pressed against the table in a futile attempt to stop the spread. Park made a noise that sounded almost like a groan. But Seo-jun didn't move. He sat perfectly still, dark eyes fixed on Amara with an intensity that made her breath catch. Not angry. Not surprised. Calculating. She watched him process it. Watched his gaze track from her face to the ruined contract to the wine-soaked pen now lying in a puddle of Brunello. Then his eyes met hers again. And she saw the moment he understood. Recognition flickered across his face, so fast she almost missed it. The microscopic widening of his pupils. The slight release of tension in his shoulders. He knew it wasn't an accident. "I'm getting towels," Amara stammered, already backing toward the door. "I'll replace everything. Wait." The single word froze her mid-step. Seo-jun stood with lethal grace. He moved around the table, each step measured and deliberate, until he stood directly in front of her. This close she could smell his cologne. Something clean and expensive with an undertone of cedar. Could see the flecks of amber hidden in his dark irises. Could feel the heat radiating from his body despite the careful distance he maintained. "Your name," he said quietly. Not a question. A command. "Amara Hayes, sir." "How long have you worked here, Amara Hayes?" 3 years. His eyes held hers, searching for something. "And in those 3 years, how many bottles have you dropped?" The question hung between them, sharp as a blade. "None," she whispered. "None," he echoed. Then louder for the room. "So this was an unusual accident. I'm very sorry, Mr. Kong. If there's anything I can do to..." "There is." He gestured to the ruined contract. "We'll need new documents. Clean copies. I assume your establishment has facilities for such things." Reeves cleared his throat. "Seo-jun, we can simply print another set. No need to involve." "I'm involving her." Seo-jun's voice went soft. "Dangerous. She ruined the originals. She can help procure the replacements. Unless you have a problem with that." The challenge was unmistakable. Reeves' smile strained. "Of course not. Whatever you need." Seo-jun turned back to Amara. "Come with me." It wasn't a request. He led her out of the private dining room, down a hallway lined with wine bottles worth more than cars, into a service corridor where the elegant facade dropped away, revealing concrete and fluorescent lights. The moment they were alone, he spun to face her. "Who sent you?" The question came out low and controlled. More terrifying than any shout. "No one sent me. I work here." "I know you work here." He stepped closer, crowding her against the wall without actually touching her. "What I want to know is why a waitress would deliberately destroy an $800 bottle of wine and an 8-figure merger contract." Amara's pulse hammered in her throat. "I didn't." "Don't." His hand came up, one finger pressed against her lips, silencing her. "I watched you. Everyone else saw a clumsy accident. I saw precision. You angled that decanter to hit the contract pages specifically. To soak the pen. To make everything unsalvageable." He leaned in until his breath ghosted across her cheek. "So I'll ask again. Why?" She should lie. Should maintain the fiction. Should do anything except tell the truth to a man who could make her disappear without anyone asking questions. But his eyes held hers with an intensity that demanded honesty. "The pen," she breathed. "The junior associate's pen. It had something on it." Seo-jun's expression didn't change. "What kind of something?" "I don't know exactly. But I worked in corporate law before I..." She stopped. Offering that truth felt like handing him a weapon. "I've seen contact poisons used in contract fraud. Substances that absorb through skin. Make people suggestible. Compliant enough to sign things they wouldn't normally sign." His eyes narrowed. "You saw this in the 2 seconds Park held that pen?" "I saw the residue. The way light hit it wrong." Amara's voice steadied. "Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just ruined your deal for nothing. But I saw what I saw and I couldn't just let me sign my empire away." He finished the sentence for her. Then stepped back, giving her space to breathe. "You could have..." "What?" "You could have let me sign. Could have stayed invisible. Could have walked away and let whatever trap this was spring shut." His gaze tracked over her face like he was memorizing every detail. "Why didn't you?" Because watching someone walk into a trap, even a dangerous someone, felt worse than the risk of intervening. Because Zoe was home being raised by neighbors because her mother had to hide in plain sight. And maybe stopping one person's world from ending could somehow balance that cosmic scale. Because 3 years of being invisible had made her forget she used to be someone who helped people. I don't know, she said instead. Bad habit. Something flickered in his expression. Almost like amusement. Bad habits can be expensive. He pulled out his phone, typed something with quick, precise movements. Do you know what that contract would have done if I'd signed it? Merged your company with Chin Logistics? Gutted my company for Chin Logistics. His jaw tightened. The merger terms looked fair on the surface. But buried in the fine print, the kind of fine print I would have noticed if I'd been in my right mind, was language that would have transferred controlling interest to Chen's board. Made me a figurehead in my own empire. He pocketed his phone. Your accident just saved me from corporate suicide. The weight of that settled over Amara like a physical thing. What happens now? She asked. Now. Seojun studied her with those dark, calculating eyes. Now I need to know everything. Who you are. What you saw. Why a waitress knows enough about contract law and contact poisons to recognize a trap that my own legal team missed. I told you. I used to work in corporate law. Yes. But you didn't finish that sentence. He leaned against the opposite wall, arms crossed. You worked in corporate law before you. What? What made a lawyer become a waitress? The question hit too close to truths she couldn't afford to share. That's not relevant. Everything about you just became relevant, Amara Hayes. His voice went soft again. That particular kind of soft that preceded violence. You inserted yourself into my business. Saved me from something I didn't know I needed saving from. That makes you either an asset or a threat. He pushed off the wall, moving toward her with predatory grace. And I don't leave threats or assets unexamined. Before Amara could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. We're not done, he said. But I need to handle the vultures circling my dining room. Stay here. I have other tables. I'll handle it. He was already moving back toward the main restaurant. Don't leave this hallway. Don't talk to anyone. Don't. Run, she finished. He stopped, turned, and smiled. It was a terrible thing, beautiful and predatory and full of dark promise. You can run, he said quietly. But understand this, I will find you. And when I do, I'll want answers you're not going to want to give. Then he was gone. Amara stood alone in that concrete corridor, her hands shaking with delayed reaction. What had she done? She'd saved a man who didn't need saving. Who would now dig into her life until he unearthed every secret she'd buried. Who would discover that Amara Hayes was a fiction. That her real name was Amara Carrington. That 3 years ago she'd testified against her former employer in a money laundering case and entered witness protection. That she'd been hiding ever since. And now she'd made herself visible to the most dangerous man in Chicago. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Park. Zoe asking for you. Told her you'd be home soon. She drew you a picture. The photo attached showed crayon flowers. Bright and cheerful and innocent. Amara closed her eyes. She couldn't run. Running meant abandoning Zoe. Meant starting over again in a new city with a new name and new fears. But staying meant facing Kang Seojun's questions. Meant lying to a man who'd already proven he could see through her masks. The sound of raised voices drifted from the dining room. Not shouting but tense. Controlled fury wrapped in business language. Amara made a decision. She walked back toward the main restaurant. Not running. Not hiding. Facing it. Whatever it turned out to be. The dining room had transformed into a battlefield dressed in business casual. Amara paused in the doorway, watching the confrontation unfold with the practiced invisibility of someone who'd learned to read powerful people from the margins. Seojun stood at the head of the table, the ruined contract spread before him like evidence at a trial. His aunt sat to his right, arms crossed, expression carved from ice. Reeves and Park stood on the opposite side, their earlier confidence cracking under scrutiny. Show me the pen, Seojun said. His voice was conversational. Pleasant even. It terrified Amar more than shouting would have. Park's face had gone chalk white. I don't. The Mont Blanc you brought. The one you set near my contract pages. Seo-jun's smile was a blade. I'd like to examine it. It's just a pen, Seo-jun. Reeves tried to laugh, but it came out forced. Let's not get paranoid over spilled wine. We can reschedule for next week with fresh documents. I'm not paranoid. Seo-jun picked up one of the wine-soaked pages, held it up to the light. I'm thorough. There's a difference. He turned to his aunt, spoke in rapid Korean. She nodded once, pulled out her phone, typed something. Within 60 seconds, 3 men in dark suits entered the private dining room. Not restaurant staff. Security. The kind that moved like violence was a second language. One of them held what looked like a briefcase. He opened it on the table, revealing equipment that definitely didn't belong in a restaurant. UV light. Testing strips. Specimen containers. What is this? Reeves demanded. You can't just. I can do whatever I want in my city. Seo-jun's tone never changed. Still pleasant. Still terrifying. No. The pen. Or I have my people search you. Your choice. Park broke. His hand trembled as he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the Mont Blanc. It gleamed under the chandelier light, expensive and innocent looking. One of Seo-jun's men took it with gloved hands. Placed it under the UV light. The barrel lit up like a warning flare. Iridescent blue-green. Unmistakable. Scopolamine derivative, the man said in accented English, reading from a handheld scanner. Mixed with dimethyl sulfoxide for skin absorption. Dosage sufficient to induce temporary suggestibility lasting approximately 4 to 6 hours. The silence in the room was absolute. Reeves recovered first. We had no knowledge of this. Park must have acted alone. Interesting theory. Seo-jun circled the table slowly, a predator choosing which prey to strike first. Except you're the one who insisted on this specific meeting time. This specific location. You're the one who brought documents that just happened to have buried clauses that would have destroyed me. He stopped directly in front of Reeves. You're the one who benefits when I sign away my empire while chemically compromised. You have no proof I was involved. I have all the proof I need. Seo-jun gestured to his security team. Take them. Separate interrogations. I want to know who ordered this, who funded it, and what the endgame was. You can't hold us prisoner. Reeves backed toward the door. We have rights. We'll call the police. We'll call them. Seo-jun's smile widened. Please. Let's discuss with Chicago PD how you attempted to drug a businessman during contract negotiations. I'm sure that will go excellently for your law firm's reputation. Park crumbled completely. He was Chin Logistics. They wanted your shipping routes. Said if we could get you to sign, they'd make us both partners in the new entity. I didn't want to, I swear, but they threatened my family. Shut up, Reeves hissed. Too late. The confession hung in the air like cordite. Seo-jun nodded to his men. They moved with efficient brutality, hauling both lawyers toward the door. Park went quietly, already broken. Reeves fought, shouting about lawsuits and consequences and people who would make Seo-jun regret this. The threats faded as they disappeared down the hallway. Then Seo-jun's eyes found Amara. She was still standing in the doorway, frozen between the urge to flee and the terrible certainty that running would make everything worse. You, he said softly. You stayed. You told me not to leave the hallway. I also told you I'd find you if you ran. He moved toward her with that same predatory grace. But you chose to come back. Why? Because running only delayed the inevitable. Because Zoe deserved better than a mother constantly looking over her shoulder. Because some part of Amara, the part that used to fight injustice in courtrooms before everything fell apart, was tired of being invisible. I don't know, she said instead. He stopped inches away. Close enough that she could see the exhaustion etched into his face despite the perfect control. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. You saved my life tonight. I spilled wine. That's not. You recognized a trap my own legal team missed. His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw with unexpected gentleness. You destroyed an $800 bottle and probably your job to stop me from signing documents that would have ruined me. That's not nothing, Amara Hayes. The way he said her name, like he was tasting each syllable, testing its authenticity, made her stomach flip. What happens now? She whispered. Now. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, the touch feather-light but possessive. Now I need to know everything about the woman who just changed the course of my entire empire. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression shifted from intense to deadly. But first we have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where Chin Logistics just sent 12 armed men to this restaurant. He pocketed his phone, his other hand finding the small of her back. They know their plan failed. They're coming to clean up loose ends. Amara's blood turned to ice. I need to leave. I need to. You need to come with me. Not a request. A command. Those men aren't just coming for me. They're coming for anyone who could expose what happened here tonight. I'm nobody. I'm just a waitress who... You're the witness who ruined their 8-figure coup. His grip on her waist tightened. Which makes you a target. The sound of gunfire shattered the restaurant's elegant calm. Screams erupted from the main dining room. Crystal shattered. Someone shouted in Korean, probably staff diving for cover. Seo-jun moved instantly, pulling Amara behind him as his other hand went to his jacket. When it emerged, he was holding a gun. Compact, black, lethal. Stay behind me, he ordered. Stay close. Don't stop moving. Then chaos consumed everything. Amara had never been shot at before. The sound was nothing like movies made it seem. Not clean cracks but overlapping thunderclaps that made her ears ring. Bullets punched through mahogany paneling and sent splinters raining down. A wine bottle exploded, spraying glass and Bordeaux across marble floors. Seo-jun moved through it like violence was choreographed. He fired twice, controlled, precise shots, and somewhere behind them a man screamed. His free hand never left Amara's wrist, pulling her through the restaurant's back corridors with absolute certainty. They burst through a service entrance into the kitchen. Stainless steel and industrial heat. Chefs shouted in Spanish and Korean, diving behind prep stations as bullets followed Seo-jun and Amara inside. Down. Seo-jun shoved her behind a commercial oven. The metal was scalding against Amara's shoulder, but she pressed into it, making herself small. 3 men in dark suits entered through the same door. Not refined like Reeves and Park. These were soldiers. Weapons drawn. Eyes scanning for targets. Seo-jun didn't hesitate. He stepped out from cover and fired. The first man went down clutching his chest. The second dove behind a prep table. The third got a shot off that went wide, embedding in the wall inches from Amara's head. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only watch as Seo-jun moved like death personified. Calm, controlled, absolutely lethal. He grabbed a chef's knife from a magnetic strip, threw it with casual precision. It buried in the third man's shoulder. The man's gun clattered away. 2 more entered. Then 3. Too many. Service elevator. Seo-jun barked in English, then repeated something in Korean to the kitchen staff. Get everyone out. Now. Chefs scrambled toward emergency exits. Smart. Survival meant not being near the gunfire. Seo-jun grabbed Amara's hand and they were running again. Down a hallway. Through a storage room. Into a freight elevator that smelled like cleaning supplies and old metal. The doors started to close. A hand caught them. Forced them open. A man filled the frame. Built like a linebacker. Gun raised. Seo-jun grabbed Amara and spun, putting himself between her and the weapon. She felt his body tense, preparing for impact. The shot never came. Instead, the man crumpled. Behind him stood Seo-jun's aunt, holding a small pistol with the casual competence of someone who'd done this before. She stepped into the elevator, hit the button for the parking garage. You're getting slow, nephew, she said in perfect English. Her tone was almost bored. 2 minutes to clear the restaurant? Embarrassing. I was being thorough, Aunt Minji. You were being distracted. Her eyes cut to Amara, sharp and assessing. Who's the girl? The witness. The one who saved me. Minji's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her gaze. Interest maybe. Or calculation. She comes with us? She comes with us, Seo-jun confirmed. The elevator descended in tense silence. Amara's ears still rang from gunfire. Her hands shook with adrenaline crash. She looked down and realized her white shirt was splattered with wine and blood. She couldn't tell whose. I need to call my daughter, she said, her voice distant in her own ears. I need to tell her I'm okay. You can call from the car, Seo-jun said. I need to go home. I need to. You can't go home. His tone was gentle but absolute. Chen's people will already be watching your apartment. You step through that door, you die. The elevator opened into the parking garage. Concrete and fluorescent lights and the smell of exhaust. A black SUV idled near the elevator doors, engine running. A man in a dark suit held the rear door open. His eyes tracked the corridor behind them, weapon ready. Seojun guided Amara into the back seat with a hand at the small of her back. Minji slid in beside her. The door closed with the heavy finality of a vault ceiling. They were moving before Amara's seatbelt clicked. Through the tinted windows, Chicago slid past in streaks of light and shadow. The rain had intensified, turning the city into a watercolor nightmare. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating buildings that looked like tombstones. Amara fumbled for her phone. Her hands were shaking so hard it took 3 tries to unlock it. 7 missed calls. All from Mrs. Park. Terror spiked through her. I need to call back. I need to. Seojun's hand covered hers, stilling her fingers. Don't. My daughter is with my neighbor. I need to tell her I'm okay. I need to. Your phone is how they'll track you. His voice was patient, like explaining something to a frightened child. The moment you make that call, Chen's people know you're alive and mobile. They triangulate your position. They follow us to wherever we're going. I don't care about me. Care about Zoe. If something happens to her because nothing will happen to her. Seojun pulled out his own phone, typed rapidly. I'm sending a security team to your neighbor's address now. They'll protect your daughter and escort her to a safe location. I don't want strange men near my daughter. Then you'll come with us to verify they're professional and trustworthy before they approach her. His eyes held hers. Dark and intense. But first you need to trust that I'm not the enemy here. I'm not the one who just tried to kill you. Amara wanted to argue. Wanted to demand he take her home. Wanted to scream that this was insane, that she wasn't part of his world, that she'd just spilled wine and didn't deserve to be hunted for it. But the rational part of her brain, the part that had survived witness protection and 3 years of hiding, knew he was right. Chen's people would be watching her apartment. Waiting for her to return. Ready to eliminate the witness who'd ruined their contract trap. He was in danger. And by extension so was Zoe. Where are you taking me? She asked quietly. Somewhere safe. Seojun's thumb brushed across her knuckles in what might have been meant as comfort. Somewhere they won't look. Somewhere I can figure out how to end this without you becoming collateral damage. Minji snorted. You mean somewhere you can interrogate her properly about what she saw? That too. At least he was honest. The SUV turned onto Lakeshore Drive, heading north. The water turned black and furious beside them, whitecaps visible even in the darkness. You said your daughter's name is Zoe? Seojun asked. Amara blinked at the sudden subject change. Yes. How old? 7. And her father? Not in the picture. Amara's voice went flat. Never was. Something shifted in Seojun's expression. Understanding maybe. Or sympathy she didn't want from a man like him. My security team leader is a woman, he said quietly. Former Special Forces. She has 2 daughters of her own. She'll be the one who approaches your neighbor. Professional. Non-threatening. And she won't take Zoe anywhere without your explicit approval. The specificity of that detail, the care embedded in it, made Amara's throat tight. Why are you helping me? She whispered. I'm nobody. I'm just. You saved my life. He said it like that explained everything. In my world that creates a debt. And I always pay my debts. The SUV pulled into an underground garage. Concrete and shadows and security cameras tracking their every movement. They exited the vehicle into what looked like a fortress. Stone walls. Reinforced doors requiring biometric scans. Men in tactical gear stationed at intervals. Seojun led her to an elevator. Minji didn't follow. She disappeared down a different corridor with a phone pressed to her ear, already coordinating whatever came next. The elevator ascended in silence. Amara watched the numbers climb. 30 floors. 40. 50. When the doors opened, she stepped into luxury that made the sovereign room look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Furniture that looked like art installations. Everything in shades of black, white, and steel gray. No warmth. No softness. Just power rendered in interior design. This is your home? She asked. This is my fortress. Seojun moved to the windows, staring out at the storm. Home implies comfort. This is just the safest place in Chicago. He turned to face her, and in the low lighting he looked almost vulnerable. Exhausted in a way his earlier control had hidden. I need you to tell me everything, he said. Not just about tonight. Everything. Your real name. Your background. Why a corporate lawyer is working as a waitress. What you're hiding. Amara's pulse kicked. I told you. You're Amara Carrington. He said it quietly. Not a question. A statement of fact. You testified against Morrison and Klein in a money laundering case 3 years ago. Federal witness protection. New identity. New city. The room tilted. How? I have resources. He moved toward her with that predatory grace. The moment you became relevant, I had my people dig into you. It took exactly 12 minutes to pierce through Amara Hayes and find Amara Carrington underneath. Terror and fury warred in her chest. You had no right. I had every right. His voice went soft. Dangerous. You inserted yourself into my business. Saved me from a trap. Made yourself part of my world whether you intended to or not. That means I need to know who you are. What your angles are. Whether you're an asset or a threat. You said that already. Amara's hands clenched into fists. I'm not a threat. I'm a single mother trying to survive with a target on her back from testifying against criminals. I work at a restaurant because my real name is flagged in every legal database. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. He was close now. So close she could feel his body heat. You recognized a contact poison in 2 seconds. You risked your job and possibly your life to stop a stranger from signing a trapped contract. That's not nobody. That's someone with courage and intelligence and... His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his entire demeanor shifted. What? Amara asked. Chen's people just raided your apartment. His eyes met hers, dark with something that might have been regret. It's gone. Everything. They torched it. The news should have devastated her. 3 years of careful rebuilding. Zoe's toys. The paralegal certificate she'd worked so hard for. The photo albums from before when her mother was still alive. All of it. But Amara found she couldn't process it. Couldn't feel anything except the strange numbness of someone in free fall. Zoe, she whispered. Is she safe? Another text. My team has her and your neighbor at a secure location. Waiting for your call. He handed her his phone. Amara took it with shaking hands. Dialed the number displayed on screen. Mrs. Park answered on the first ring. Hello. Mrs. Park, it's Amara. Is Zoe okay? She's fine, dear. A little confused about the nice ladies who came to take us on an adventure, but fine. The elderly woman's voice was calm. Steady. They explained you were in trouble. That we needed to leave quickly. Can I talk to her? Rustling. Then, Mommy. The sound of Zoe's voice broke something in Amara's chest. Hey baby. Are you okay? I'm okay. Mrs. Park said we're having a sleepover in a fancy hotel. There's room service and everything. Zoe's excitement was tinged with uncertainty. But why aren't you here? Are you in trouble? No baby. Not trouble. Just, work ran late. Really late. But I'm coming to get you soon, okay? You promise. I promise. Pause. Then quieter. The ladies who came to get us were really nice. They had pictures of their own kids. And one of them speaks Korean like Mrs. Park. That's good, baby. Mommy? Are you crying? Amara hadn't realized she was. She wiped her eyes roughly. No, sweetie. Just tired. Be good for Mrs. Park, okay? I love you. Love you too, Mommy. The call ended. Amara stood there, phone still pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face in silent tracks. Then Seojun's arms came around her. She should have pushed him away. Should have maintained distance from a man who was essentially her captor, who'd invaded her privacy, who existed in a world of violence she wanted no part of. But she didn't. She turned into his chest and let herself break. Just for a moment. Just long enough to release the terror and exhaustion and overwhelming relief that Zoe was safe. Seojun held her without speaking. One hand pressed against her back. The other cradling her head. His heart beat steady beneath her ear, calm despite everything. "Thank you," she finally whispered against his shirt. "For getting her out. For keeping her safe. I told you. I always pay my debts." She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. This close she could see the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow. The way exhaustion etched shadows beneath his eyes. The flecks of gold hidden in his dark irises. He looked dangerous. Deadly. Absolutely capable of everything she feared. But he also looked at her like she mattered. Like saving him had created something between them that couldn't be easily dismissed. "What happens now?" she asked. His hand came up, cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. "Now," he said softly, "I make sure Chin Logistics regrets threatening what's mine. I'm not yours. Aren't you?" His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "You saved my life. You're under my protection. You're in my fortress with your daughter secured by my people. What exactly about that situation suggests you're not mine?" The possessiveness should have terrified her. Instead, it sent heat curling through her stomach. "This is insane," she breathed. "Yes." He leaned closer until his breath ghosted across her lips. "But you're not running. You won't let me. I'd find you. A statement of fact. But I don't think you want to run. I think you're tired of hiding. Tired of being invisible. Tired of pretending you're less than you are." His mouth was inches from hers now. "Am I wrong?" Amara should have said yes. Should have pushed him away. Should have demanded he take her to Zoe and let them disappear into witness protection again. But he was right. She was tired. Tired of shrinking. Tired of serving people who didn't see her. Tired of being afraid. And this man, this dangerous, violent man, had seen her. Not Amara Hayes, the invisible waitress. Amara Carrington. The lawyer. The witness. The mother. The woman who'd risked everything to stop a stranger from walking into a trap. He'd seen all of her. And instead of turning away, he'd pulled her closer. "You're not wrong," she whispered. Then his mouth was on hers. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was claiming and desperate and edged with something darker than desire. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head. His other arm locked around her waist, pulling her flush against his body. Amara gasped against his lips and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel. This was insane. Reckless. Dangerous. She kissed him back anyway. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Seo-jun rested his forehead against hers. "You need to understand something," he said, his voice rough. "I'm not a good man, Amara. I do terrible things to terrible people. I've built an empire on violence and fear. Getting close to me means accepting that darkness. I know. Do you?" His eyes searched hers. "Because once you're mine, truly mine, I don't share. I don't let go. I protect what's mine with everything I have. Even if that means destroying anyone who threatens it." The warning should have sent her running. Instead she thought about Zoe. About the apartment that was now ash. About Chen's people who would have killed her without hesitation. About a life spent invisible and afraid. "Destroy them," she said quietly. "Everyone who came after me tonight. Everyone who put my daughter at risk. Destroy them all." Something shifted in Seo-jun's expression. Surprise maybe. Or recognition. "You mean that?" Every word. His smile was dark and dangerous and full of promise. "Then let's go to war." The next 72 hours passed in a blur of strategy and violence. Seo-jun's fortress became a command center. Screens displaying security feeds from across the city. Men in tactical gear coming and going with military precision. Minji coordinating teams with the efficiency of a general marshalling troops. And Amara, sequestered in a guest suite that was larger than her destroyed apartment, watching through windows as Seo-jun systematically dismantled Chin Logistics piece by piece. He'd brought Zoe to the fortress on the second day. His security chief, a woman named Ji-woo with kind eyes and lethal competence, had escorted her and Mrs. Park through layers of security into what Amara could only describe as a palace. Zoe had been fascinated rather than frightened. The 7-year-old treated it like an adventure, exploring rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, delighted by the Korean food Mrs. Park helped the kitchen staff prepare, chattering endlessly about the nice man who'd given her a tablet loaded with educational games. The nice man being Kang Seo-jun, apex predator and criminal empire builder, who looked at Amara's daughter with unexpected gentleness. "She's smart," he said on the third evening, watching Zoe explain marine biology to a bemused security guard. "She gets that from you." They stood in his study, another space of brutal minimalism, while Zoe occupied the main living area with Mrs. Park and 3 heavily armed guards disguised as friendly staff. "She gets it from my mother," Amara corrected. "My mom was a professor. Biochemistry. Before she died." Seojun's expression softened fractionally. "How old were you?" 18. First year of college. Amara's throat tightened with old grief. "Drunk driver. She was gone before I even made it to the hospital." "I'm sorry." The simplicity of the condolence made it genuine. "Your mother?" Amara asked. "The photo in your bedroom? Dead as well." Cancer. "I was 14. He moved to the windows, staring out at the city lights. "My father was not equipped to raise children alone. So my aunt stepped in." Minji. Minji. Something that might have been affection flickered across his face. "She's the reason I survived my father's attempts to forge me into a weapon." Amara moved to stand beside him, close but not touching, the space between them charged with awareness. "Did it work?" she asked quietly. "The forging. You've seen what I am." His reflection in the glass looked carved from stone. "You tell me." She thought about the past 3 days. About the reports she'd overheard, Chin Logistics losing shipments, warehouses raided, key personnel arrested on charges that appeared out of nowhere. About the systematic destruction of an empire that had tried to destroy him. About the man who'd orchestrated all of it with surgical precision. "You're exactly what he wanted you to be," she said. "And absolutely nothing like him at all." Seojun turned to look at her. "Really look at her. How do you figure that?" "Because a weapon doesn't protect. It only destroys." Amara gestured toward the main room where Zoe's laughter echoed. "You brought my daughter here. You're keeping her safe not because you had to, but because you knew I needed it. A weapon doesn't care about things like that." His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw. "You see me differently than I see myself. Maybe you need someone who does." The moment stretched between them. Tarch. Dangerous. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression went cold. "What?" Amara asked. "Chenseo. He wants to meet. Negotiate terms." "You're going." "I'm going." Seojun's smile was predatory. "He's going to offer me everything he has in exchange for stopping the dismantling of his company. I'm going to listen. Then I'm going to destroy him anyway." "Why listen if you're just going to refuse?" "Because I want him to know who beat him." He turned to face her fully. "I want him to understand that the woman he tried to kill cost him everything. That underestimating you was the biggest mistake of his life." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made Amara's breath catch. "When do you meet him?" "Tomorrow night. Neutral location. Public enough that he won't try anything stupid." "I'm coming with you." Seojun's eyes narrowed. "Absolutely not. He tried to kill me. I deserve to see his face when you tell him he failed. It's too dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous." Amara stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "But I'm not hiding anymore. You said I was tired of being invisible. You were right. So I'm done being the protected witness hiding in a safe room while you handle everything." He stared at her for a long moment. Then surprisingly he smiled. "You're going to be the death of me. Or the making of you." She rose on her toes, pressed a quick kiss to his jaw. "Either way I'm coming." His arms came around her waist, pulling her flush against him. "Fine," he murmured against her hair. "But you stay close. You do exactly what I say. And if anything goes wrong, I run." "I know." "No." His grip tightened. "If anything goes wrong you let me handle it. You let me protect you. Because I'm very good at violence, Amara. And anyone who tries to hurt you will learn exactly how good." The promise should have frightened her. Instead it sent heat curling through her entire body. "Okay," she whispered. They stood there, wrapped in each other, while Chicago glittered beyond the windows and Zoe's laughter echoed from the other room. Tomorrow they would face her would-be killers. Tonight she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone who saw her as worth protecting. Worth keeping. Worth everything. The meeting location was a restaurant in Chinatown. Public, neutral, full of witnesses who would make open violence too risky. Chin had chosen well. Amara wore clothes Seojun's people had provided. A black dress that looked elegant but hid the ballistic weave sewn into the bodice. Her hair was down, loose curls framing her face. She looked beautiful. She felt like a weapon being readied for deployment. Seojun stood beside her in the elevator descending to the parking garage. Charcoal suit. Dark shirt. No tie. He looked like violence wrapped in expensive fabric. Last chance to change your mind, he said. I'm not changing my mind. Stubborn. You like that about me. His hand found hers. Squeezed once. I like everything about you. That's the problem. The SUV ride was tense. Minji accompanied them along with 4 security personnel in a follow vehicle. They arrived at the restaurant just after dark, when the streets filled with evening crowds and neon signs painted everything in shades of red and gold. Chin was already there. Seated at a corner table with 2 bodyguards flanking him. Mid-50s. Silver hair. Expensive suit. He looked like money and power and casual cruelty. He smiled when Seojun approached. Then his eyes landed on Amara and the smile faltered. You brought the witness, he said. His English carried a faint accent. Bold choice. I bring what's mine. Seojun pulled out a chair for Amara, positioned so he sat between her and Chin. You wanted to talk? Talk. Chen's eyes never left Amara. I assumed she'd be dead by now. You assumed wrong. Seojun's voice went soft. Deadly. She's very much alive. Under my protection. Which means anyone who tries to harm her answers to me. I had no knowledge of. Don't insult my intelligence. Seojun leaned back in his chair, utterly relaxed. Utterly dangerous. You ordered Reeves to drug me. You provided the contact poison. You sent armed men to clean up witnesses when the plan failed. He pulled out his phone, turned the screen toward Chin. This is the arrest warrant being issued tomorrow morning for corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted murder. Federal charges. Minimum 20 years. Chen's face went white. Unless, Seojun continued, you give me what I want. Which is full ownership transfer of Chin Logistics. Every asset. Every account. Every property. Signed over to me by midnight tonight. That's insane. The company is worth. I know what it's worth. Seojun's smile was a blade. I also know what you tried to do to me. What you tried to do to her. He gestured to Amara. This is me being generous. You lose the company but you keep your life. Chen's hands clenched on the table. And if I refuse? Then the federal warrants go through. You spend 20 years in prison. And Chin Logistics gets dismantled piece by piece anyway because I'll buy every single asset in the bankruptcy auction. The trap was perfect. Absolute. Chin knew it. You can't do this, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I already have. Seojun stood, buttoning his jacket. Contracts are being drawn up as we speak. You have until midnight to sign, or I let the federal prosecutors have you. He offered his hand to Amara. She took it, rising with her chin high and her eyes locked on Chen's face. This is because of her? Chen's voice dripped venom. You're destroying me over a waitress? Seojun moved so fast Amara barely saw it. One moment he was standing. The next his hand was around Chen's throat, slamming the older man back into his chair. This waitress, Seojun said softly, his face inches from Chen's, saved my life. Risked her own to protect mine. That makes her worth more than your entire empire. He released Chin with a shove. Midnight. Sign the papers or see what happens when I stop being generous. Then his hand found Amara's again, and they were walking out of the restaurant into the neon-lit street. Amara didn't realize she was shaking until they reached the SUV. You okay? Seojun asked, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. I thought you were going to kill him. I wanted to. His jaw was tight. But you asked me to destroy him, not murder him. There's a difference. The distinction should have terrified her. Instead it made her feel seen. Understood. Practiced. They drove back to the fortress in silence. Amara's hand never left Seojun's. When they arrived, Zoe was asleep in the guest room, Mrs. Park dozing in the chair beside her bed. The sight of them, safe, peaceful, utterly unaware of the violence that had just transpired, made Amara's chest ache. Seojun guided her to his study. Chin will sign, he said, pouring them both whiskey. He's too smart to refuse. And if he doesn't? Then I make good on every threat. He handed her a glass. But either way it's over. He can't touch you. Can't touch Zoe. You're safe. Amara took a sip. The whiskey burned. What happens now? She asked. After Chin signs? After this is done. Seojun studied her for a long moment. Then he set down his glass and closed the distance between them. Now, he said softly, I ask you to stay. Stay. Here. With me. Not as a protected witness or a debt to be repaid. His hand came up, cupping her face. As my partner. My equal. The woman who saved my life and somehow made me want things I never thought I'd want. Amara's breath caught. Things like what? Like waking up next to someone who sees me as more than a weapon. Like coming home to a child's laughter. Like building something that isn't just power and violence. He leaned his forehead against hers. Like having a family. The words hung between them. Vulnerable and raw. You barely know me, Amara whispered. I know you risked everything to save a stranger. I know you're brilliant and brave and fierce when it comes to protecting your daughter. I know I've never met anyone who looks at me the way you do. How do I look at you? Like I'm worth saving. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Like I'm more than the monster my father tried to create. Amara closed her eyes, feeling tears slip free. You are worth saving, she said. You're stubborn and dangerous and probably going to drive me insane. But you're also kind when you think no one's watching. You're gentle with Zoe. You kept your promises. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. And I'm tired of running. Tired of hiding. Tired of being afraid. Then stay. His voice was rough. Stay and let me keep you safe. Stay and build something new with me. Stay because I'm selfish enough to want you even though you deserve better. What if I don't want better? Amara's hands found his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palms. What if I want this? Want you? Seojun's control shattered. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. His hands slid into her hair, angling her head as he deepened the kiss. Amara melted into him, her fingers clutching his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he looked at her with eyes that held promises and threats and something that looked dangerously like love. Say yes, he whispered. Stay with me. Let me show you what it means to be cherished instead of hunted. Amara thought about Zoe, asleep down the hall in a fortress that would keep her safe. About the life they'd lost and the life they could build. About the man who'd seen her, truly seen her, and decided she was worth everything. Yes, she breathed. I'll stay. His smile was devastating. Then he was kissing her again, walking her backward toward his bedroom, and Amara let herself fall into the dangerous promise of a life with a man who would burn the world to keep her safe. 6 months later. The restaurant was called Sanctuary. It occupied a converted warehouse in the West Loop, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs and a wine selection that made sommeliers weep with envy. It was also a front for one of Seojun's legitimate businesses. A place where former criminals could find employment after serving their time. Where people with checkered pasts could rebuild without judgment. Amara had designed the concept. Seojun had funded it. Together they'd created something that made the city better instead of worse. Tonight was the opening gala. Chicago's elite mingling with community organizers and formerly incarcerated workers. It shouldn't have worked. It did. Amara stood near the bar, watching Seojun charm a city council member who'd been skeptical of the project. He wore a tailored suit and his most diplomatic smile. Looking nothing like the dangerous man she knew him to be. Looking like someone building a legacy instead of maintaining an empire. He's different because of you, Minji said, appearing at Amara's elbow. The older woman wore Chanel and an expression of approval. Softer. Better. He was always good, Amara corrected. He just needed someone to see it. And you needed someone to keep you safe. Minji's smile was knowing. Seems like a fair trade. Movement at the entrance caught Amara's attention. Zoe burst through the doors, Mrs. Park trailing behind with an apologetic expression. The 7-year-old wore a new dress, dark blue with stars, and ran straight for Amara. Mommy, Mr. Seojun said I could help greet people. Can I? Please. Amara laughed, catching her daughter in a hug. If Mr. Seojun said so, then yes. He said lots of things. Zoe's eyes were bright. He said this restaurant helps people. He said you designed it. He said we're building something important. We are, baby. He also said. Zoe paused, suddenly shy. He asked if I'd be okay if he married you. He wanted my permission. Amara's heart stopped. He what? But Zoe was already running off to join Seojun, who'd crouched down to her level and was listening seriously to whatever she was chattering about. Minji chuckled. Smooth. Getting the daughter's approval first. He didn't ask me. Didn't he? Minji gestured toward the main dining room. Amara followed her gaze and froze. The entire restaurant had gone quiet. Guests were all turning to look at the center of the room, where Seojun stood, one hand holding Zoe's, the other holding a small velvet box. He met Amara's eyes across the crowded space. Then he smiled, that devastating smile that transformed his whole face, and mouthed two words. Come here. The crowd parted as Amara walked toward him on shaking legs. When she reached him, Zoe was practically vibrating with excitement. I said yes, the 7-year-old announced. I said you should definitely marry him because he's nice and he makes you smile and he promised to teach me Korean. Amara's eyes burned with tears. Seojun opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple. Elegant. A diamond set in platinum with smaller stones that caught the light. 6 months ago, he said quietly, his voice carrying in the sudden silence, you spilled wine on a contract and changed my life. You saw me as worth saving when I'd stopped believing that was true. He dropped to one knee, still holding Zoe's hand. You gave me a reason to build instead of just survive. You showed me what it means to have a family. To have a home. To have someone who sees all the darkness in me and stays anyway. His eyes held hers. Dark and intense and full of promise. Marry me, Amara. Let me spend the rest of my life keeping you safe. Let me be the father Zoe deserves. Let me build this new world with you. Amara looked at the man kneeling before her. Dangerous and gentle. Violent and kind. Everything she never knew she needed. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, yes. The restaurant erupted in applause as Seojun slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like wine and promise and the future they'd fought for. Zoe squealed and wrapped her arms around both their legs. And Amara, former witness, former invisible waitress, former woman in hiding, felt herself finally, completely, irrevocably seen. Later, after the party wound down and Zoe fell asleep in the car on the way back to the fortress that had become their home, Seojun carried their daughter up to her bedroom while Amara watched. He was gentle, careful, tucking Zoe under her covers and smoothing her hair back with a tenderness that still surprised Amara sometimes. When he emerged, he found Amara waiting in the hallway. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing me. For keeping us safe. For asking her permission. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. She's my daughter now too, he said simply. Of course I asked her permission. She'll be spoiled. Hopelessly. He grinned. But she'll also be protected. Educated. Loved beyond measure. I'm going to make sure that girl knows she's capable of anything. Amara's throat tightened. What about more children? She asked. Do you want everything? He interrupted, his hands framing her face. I want everything with you. More children if you want them. A life that isn't just survival. A legacy that's more than violence. He kissed her softly. You gave me that, Amara. You gave me hope for something better. She kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. We gave each other that, she corrected. You kept me safe when I was hunted. You saw me when I was invisible. You chose us when you could have chosen violence. I'll always choose you. His voice was fierce. Always. They stood there in the hallway, wrapped in each other, while their daughter slept safely nearby and the city glittered beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. 6 months ago, Amara had spilled wine on a contract and saved a stranger's life. Tonight, she'd promised to spend the rest of her life with the man that stranger had become. Tomorrow they'd continue building something new. Something better. Something worth protecting. But for now this moment was enough. Being seen. Being safe. Being loved. Finally, irrevocably, completely home. The end. Epilogue. 1 year later. The Gilded Lotus had been renovated. New ownership. New mission. Now it served as a community center offering legal aid to people who couldn't afford traditional lawyers. Amara ran the program. Her law license reinstated after years of being buried under witness protection. Her real name, Carrington, displayed proudly on the door. She was no longer invisible. Seo-jun stood in the center's main room, Zoe's hand in his, watching his wife, counsel a young mother about custody rights. "She's really good at this," Zoe whispered. "She's good at everything," Seo-jun whispered back. Amara looked up, caught his eye and smiled. That smile still devastated him. Still made him believe in things he'd thought were impossible. Like redemption. Like family. Like building something that helped instead of destroyed. "Mr. Seo-jun?" Zoe tugged his hand. "Can we get ice cream after this?" "Of course." "And can we talk about getting a puppy?" He laughed. "We can talk about it." "That means yes." Zoe bounced. "Mommy says when you say, 'we can talk about it,' you always say yes eventually. Your mother knows me too well." Amara finished with her client and approached them, her smile widening as Zoe chattered about the puppy she definitely wasn't getting, probably. "Ready to go home?" she asked. Seo-jun pulled her close, dropping a kiss on her forehead. "Already there," he said. Because home wasn't a fortress or a city or even a building. Home was this. His wife's laughter, his daughter's joy, the life they'd built from the ashes of violence and fear. Home was the woman who'd spilled wine and saved his life. Who'd seen the man beneath the monster. Who'd chosen him. Stayed with him. Built this beautiful, impossible future with him. "Let's go," Amara said, linking her fingers with his. And together, assassin and witness, monster and savior, family forged from survival, they walked out into the Chicago evening. Safe. Finally, irrevocably home. The morning started the way most mornings started now, with chaos that somehow felt like peace. Zoe was arguing with Mrs. Park about whether 8-year-olds were old enough to drink coffee. Mrs. Park was winning, offering hot chocolate instead while preparing breakfast in the fortress's industrial kitchen. The elderly Korean woman had moved into the East Wing 6 months ago, claiming she was tired of her old apartment and not so subtly admitting she'd become too attached to Zoe to live anywhere else. Seo-jun stood at the stove, flipping Korean-style pancakes with the concentration he usually reserved for hostile takeovers. He wore sweatpants and a t-shirt that Zoe had decorated with fabric markers, currently sporting a slightly lopsided drawing of a dragon she'd labeled Mr. Seo-jun but nice. Amara watched from the doorway, coffee cup cradled in her hands, her heart so full it ached. This was home. Real home. Not the fortress she'd first entered a year ago, but something that had been transformed by love and laughter and a 7-year-old's insistence that families eat breakfast together. "You're staring," Seo-jun said without looking up. "I can feel it." "Admiring," Amara corrected, moving into the kitchen. "There's a difference." He glanced at her and his expression softened in that way that still made her breath catch. Even after a year of marriage, even after countless mornings just like this one, the way he looked at her felt new every single time. "Come taste this," he said, offering her a forkful of pancake. "Zoe says I'm getting better, but I think she's being diplomatic." "I'm being honest." Zoe protested around a mouthful of hot chocolate. "They're really good now. They don't taste like paper anymore." "They never tasted like paper. The first ones did." Zoe's grin was impish. "But Mommy ate them anyway because she loves you." Amara laughed, accepting the bite. The pancake was actually perfect, sweet and savory with just the right amount of chew. "She's right," Amara said. "These are excellent." Seo-jun's smile was satisfied. "Mrs. Park's been teaching me. Apparently I have natural talent but no patience." "Accurate assessment," Minji announced, sweeping into the kitchen like a general inspecting troops. She'd also moved into the fortress, claiming the West Wing and filling it with antiques and art that made the brutal minimalism slightly less brutal. She poured herself coffee, surveyed the domestic scene, and shook her head with something that looked suspiciously like fondness. "A year ago you could barely boil water," she said to Seo-jun. "Now look at you. Domesticated." "I prefer evolved," he countered. Tomato. Minji settled at the breakfast bar beside Zoe. "Speaking of evolution, we need to discuss the Lee situation." Seo-jun's expression shifted imperceptibly. Still calm but with an edge of steel underneath. Not at breakfast, Amara said quietly. We agreed. Minji looked between them then nodded. After then. But soon. It's escalating. The Lee situation. 3 weeks ago, a rival organization had started testing Seojun's boundaries. Small provocations at first. Encroaching on territory, undercutting shipping contracts, recruiting his lower-level people with promises of better pay. Nothing overtly hostile. Nothing that demanded immediate retaliation. But persistent enough to be a problem. Amara had watched Seojun handle it with the same methodical precision he brought to everything. Countering each move. Reinforcing loyalty. Making strategic alliances. But last week things had changed. Someone had taken photos of Zoe leaving school. Delivered them to one of Seojun's warehouses with a note. Beautiful daughter. Would be a shame if anything happened to her. Seojun had gone very, very still when he'd seen those photos. Then he doubled Zoe's security detail, implemented new protocols, and started planning something he wouldn't quite share with Amara yet. She knew better than to push. Knew he was trying to protect her from the worst of his world even while building something better within it. But she also knew that look in his eyes. The one that said someone had made a fatal mistake and just didn't know it yet. I want to help, she said now, meeting his gaze across the kitchen. With the Lee situation. I want to be part of solving it. No. Seojun. No. His voice was gentle but absolute. You run the legal center. You counsel families. You build the things I can't build. But this. He gestured vaguely, encompassing the darker parts of his empire. This is my problem. Mine to solve. They threatened our daughter. Which is why I'm handling it. He moved toward her, his hands framing her face with a tenderness that contradicted the steel in his voice. You gave me something worth protecting. Let me protect it. Amara wanted to argue. Wanted to insist that they were partners, that she was capable, that she'd proven herself a year ago when she'd faced down Chen. But she also understood the truth beneath his words. This was how he loved. Through protection. Through taking threats and eliminating them before they could touch the people he cared about. Okay, she said quietly. But you don't do anything reckless. I'm never reckless. I'm strategic. You're both, Minji interjected. Which is why I'm coming with you to the meeting tonight. Amara's head snapped toward Seojun. What meeting? He had the grace to look slightly guilty. Lee requested a sit-down. Neutral location. Wants to discuss misunderstandings and better cooperation. That's obviously a trap. Obviously. His smile was sharp. But I'm curious what kind of trap. And I'd like to see his face when I tell him exactly what's going to happen if he ever photographs my daughter again. The promise of violence was clear. Amara should have been disturbed by it. Should have insisted on de-escalation and diplomacy and all the things her legal training valued. But someone had threatened Zoe. And Amara discovered that her capacity for mercy had very specific limits. Where's the meeting? She asked. The sovereign room. Of course. Full circle back to where everything had started. I'm coming with you, Amara said. Absolutely not. You don't get to absolutely not me. She straightened, meeting his gaze with steel of her own. I'm your wife. Your partner. And if someone threatened our daughter, I have every right to look them in the eye while you destroy them. Something shifted in Seojun's expression. Pride maybe. Or recognition that the invisible waitress he'd met a year ago had transformed into someone who matched him strength for strength. Fine, he said finally. But you stay with Minji. You don't engage directly. And if anything goes wrong. I know the protocols. She'd learned them over the past year. Knew exactly how to move, where to position herself, when to run and when to stay. She'd become fluent in his world while teaching him to be fluent in hers. Zoe, who'd been watching this entire exchange with wide eyes, raised her hand like she was in school. Yes. Seojun said, a smile tugging at his mouth. Can I come to the dangerous meeting? Absolutely not. I could hide under the table. I'm really good at being quiet. The answer is no, little dragon. Zoe pouted. You guys get to have all the fun. This isn't fun, Amara said, moving to crouch beside her daughter's chair. This is grown-up business. Boring and dangerous and definitely not for 8-year-olds. But what if the bad man tries to hurt you? I should be there to protect you. The fierce declaration made Amara's throat tight. You protect us by being safe, Seojun said, kneeling beside Amara so they were both at Zoe's level. By staying here with Mrs. Park and Jiwoo. By trusting that your mom and I know how to handle this. Promise you'll come back? I promise. He held out his pinky. Zoe linked her smaller finger with his, then with Amara's, creating a three-way promise that felt sacred despite its simplicity. Okay, she said. But you have to tell me about it after. Everything. Even the boring parts. Deal. The rest of the day passed in strange juxtaposition. Normal routines layered over the knowledge of what was coming. Amara went to the legal center, counseled 3 clients, reviewed case files. Seojun handled business calls and met with his security team. They had lunch together in his office, stealing kisses between conference calls like teenagers instead of a crime lord and his attorney wife. By the time evening arrived, Amara's nerves were stretched thin. She dressed in the clothes Seojun's people had laid out. Another black dress with ballistic weave. Heels that could double as weapons if needed. Hair swept up to expose the diamond earrings that contained GPS trackers. When she emerged from their bedroom, Seojun was waiting. He wore a charcoal suit that made him look like death personified. All sharp lines and dangerous elegance. But his eyes softened when he saw her. You're beautiful, he said. You're biased. Completely. He crossed to her, his hands settling on her waist. Last chance to stay home. Not happening. He kissed her, slow and deep and full of promises for after this was done. When they pulled apart, Minji was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, expression amused. You two done being disgustingly in love? We have a war to win. The sovereign room looked exactly as Amara remembered. Crystal chandeliers. White tablecloths. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. The kind of place where power players made deals that shaped the city. She'd walked through these doors a year ago as invisible help. Tonight she entered on Seojun's arm as his equal. The maitre d' recognized Seojun immediately. Everyone did. He led them to a private dining room in the back. The same one where Amara had spilled wine and changed everything. Lee Taeyong waited inside. He was younger than Amara expected. Early 40s maybe. Handsome in a cold way. Expensive suit. Practiced smile. 2 bodyguards flanked him, their eyes tracking every movement with professional paranoia. Kang Seojun. Lee stood offering his hand. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Seojun ignored the outstretched hand. Instead he pulled out a chair for Amara, positioned himself between her and Lee, and only then acknowledged the other man with a slight nod. Let's skip the pleasantries, Seojun said, his voice conversational. You asked for this meeting. Talk. Lee's smile strained slightly. His eyes flicked to Amara, then Minji, assessing. I don't believe we've met, he said to Amara. Lee Taeyong. Amara Kang. She used Seojun's name deliberately. A claim and a warning. I know who you are. And I know what you did. Something flickered in Lee's expression. I'm afraid I don't. The photographs. Seojun's voice went soft. Deadly. Of my daughter. Leaving school. You had them delivered to my warehouse with a threat. Lee had the audacity to look confused. I'm sorry, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Really? Seojun pulled out his phone, set it on the table. The screen displayed the photos in question. Zoe laughing with her friends, completely unaware she was being watched. Lee studied them and Amara watched his face carefully. She'd learned to read people in courtrooms and cross-examinations. Knew the difference between genuine surprise and performed innocence. What she saw on Lee's face was real confusion. Followed quickly by calculation and something that looked like rage. I didn't authorize this, he said quietly. Then who did? I don't know. Lee's hands clenched on the table. But I'm going to find out. The tension in the room shifted. This wasn't going the way anyone expected. You're telling me, Seojun said slowly, that someone in your organization is acting without your knowledge? Threatening children? That you've lost control? The accusation hit its mark. Lee's jaw tightened. My organization is solid. But someone may be. He paused, choosing words carefully. Someone may be attempting to destabilize our negotiations by provoking you into a war I don't want. Negotiations. Amara spoke up. What negotiations? Lee's eyes cut to her. I've been trying to establish a legitimate partnership with your husband for months. Territory sharing. Resource cooperation. A treaty that benefits both organizations. He gestured to the bodyguards. I came here tonight to finalize terms. Not to threaten anyone's child. Seojun studied him for a long moment. Then he turned to Minji, spoke in rapid Korean. She responded equally quick. A full conversation that excluded everyone else at the table. Finally, Seojun turned back to Lee. If you're telling the truth, and that's a significant if, then we have a mutual problem. Someone in your organization is trying to start a war. Someone in mine might be helping them. A coup, Lee said flatly. Someone wants us to destroy each other so they can pick up the pieces. Exactly. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. How do we find them? Amara asked. Both men looked at her. We. Lee's tone was patronizing. With respect, Mrs. Kong, this is organizational business. My daughter was photographed. Amara's voice was steel. That makes it my business. And I'm very good at finding people who don't want to be found. She pulled out her own phone, opened an app Seojun's tech team had built for her. The photos were delivered to your warehouse 3 days ago, she said to Seojun. I'm assuming you had your people trace the delivery service? Dead end. Fake company. Untraceable. But the photos themselves have metadata. Time stamps. Location data. Probably scrubbed, but scrubbing leaves traces. Her fingers flew across the screen. And if we cross-reference with Lee's organizational movements over the past month. She worked in silence for 30 seconds while everyone watched. Then she turned the screen around. 3 people had access to both organizations, either through business dealings or proximity to this conflict. She highlighted names. Park Ji-hun, Kim Wei, and David Park. Seojun's expression went cold. Park, the lawyer who tried to poison me. He was released from federal custody 2 months ago, Amara confirmed. Plea deal. Testimony against Chin Logistics in exchange for reduced sentence. And now he's trying to start a war between the 2 largest Korean organizations in Chicago. Lee's voice was bitter. Let me guess. If we destroy each other, he steps in to rebuild Chen's empire using the chaos as cover. Exactly. Minji leaned forward. Do we know where he is? Amara's fingers moved across her phone again. As of 2 hours ago? The Gilded Lily. Making reservations for tomorrow night under an alias. The same restaurant where everything had started with Chin a year ago. Seojun and Lee exchanged a look. Some unspoken communication passed between them. We take him together, Lee said. Agreed. Seojun extended his hand. This time Lee took it. The handshake sealed more than a temporary alliance. It was the beginning of the treaty Lee had wanted. Forged not over contract negotiations but through mutual threat and mutual respect. Tomorrow night then, Lee said standing. The Gilded Lily. We end this. After Lee and his men left, Amara sagged slightly in her chair. That was not what I expected, she admitted. War rarely is. Seojun moved behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders, meeting the tension there. You were incredible, by the way. The way you traced those photos found Park. That was brilliant. I'm a good lawyer. Research is what I do. You're more than a good lawyer. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. You're the reason I didn't walk into that meeting ready to burn Lee's entire organization to the ground. You insisted on coming. On looking for the truth instead of just assuming guilt. You would have figured it out. Eventually. After a lot of bloodshed. His hands stilled. You make me better, Amara. Slower to violence. More willing to look beyond the obvious. She tilted her head back to look at him. You make me braver. More willing to fight instead of hide. Minji cleared her throat. This is very touching, but we still have a problem. Park knows we're hunting him. By tomorrow night he might disappear. He won't disappear. Seojun's smile was predatory. Because he doesn't know we've identified him yet. He thinks he's successfully hiding behind the conflict he created. Tomorrow night, when he sees Lee and me working together instead of destroying each other, his entire plan collapses. And then? Amara asked. Then we give him the same choice I gave Chin. Surrender everything and live. Or refuse and face the consequences. They drove home through Chicago's nightlit streets. Amara sat pressed against Seo-jun's side, his arm around her shoulders, watching the city blur past. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked quietly. "The simplicity of just destroying problems? Not having to consider all the angles and consequences." He was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes, when I'm tired or frustrated or someone threatens what's mine." His arm tightened around her. "But then I remember what that kind of destruction cost. The bodies. The fear. The emptiness of winning through violence alone." He turned to meet her eyes. "You taught me there are better ways. Harder ways, yes. More complicated. But better. I didn't teach you that. You already knew it. You just needed permission to believe it." His kiss was soft, grateful, full of the love they'd built from chaos and danger and unlikely beginnings. When they arrived home, Zoe was still awake despite the late hour. She sat in the living room with Mrs. Park, both of them watching a Korean drama with subtitles. The moment she saw Amara and Seo-jun, she launched herself at them. "You're back. You're safe. Did you beat the bad man?" "We did," Seo-jun said, catching her mid-leap. "Well, we figured out who the real bad man is. Tomorrow we deal with him." "Can I help tomorrow?" "Absolutely not." Zoe sighed dramatically. "You always say that. Because the answer is always no." But he was smiling as he said it, already carrying her toward her bedroom. "Come on, little dragon. Way past your bedtime." Amara followed, watching Seo-jun settle Zoe under her covers with a gentleness that still made her heart ache. This man who could order executions with a phone call tucked their daughter in like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because to him she was. "Story?" Zoe asked hopefully. "It's very late. Please? Just a short one." Seo-jun glanced at Amara. He shrugged. "Short one." He settled on the edge of the bed. "Once upon a time there was a dragon who lived in a fortress." Amara leaned against the doorway, listening to him weave a fairy tale about dragons and clever lawyers and families forged from unlikely beginnings. Zoe was asleep before he finished, but he told the whole story anyway. When he finally stood, he found Amara watching him with tears in her eyes. "What?" he asked softly. "Nothing. Everything." She moved into his arms. Thank you. For loving her. For being exactly what she needs. She's easy to love. Just like her mother." They stood there in their daughter's doorway, wrapped in each other, until Mrs. Park shooed them out so she could properly settle Zoe for the night. In their bedroom, the fortress's master suite that Amara had slowly transformed with color and warmth and photos of their growing family, Seo-jun pulled her close. "Tomorrow," he said against her hair, "when we confront Park, I need you somewhere safe. Not in the restaurant. Not anywhere near the danger. We've been through this. I know. I know you're capable. I know you're brave. I know you can handle yourself." His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "But I can't think clearly when you're in danger. And tomorrow I need to be very, very clear." The admission cost him. She could see it in the tension around his eyes. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll stay back. But I want eyes on what's happening. Feed from your security team. So I know you're safe." "Deal." She kissed him. Slow and deep and full of a year's worth of love and trust and partnership. When they finally fell into bed, wrapped around each other in the darkness, Amara listened to Seo-jun's breathing even out into sleep. Tomorrow they'd face another threat. Another danger. Another reminder that their world was built on precarious foundations. But tonight she let herself believe in the fortress around them. The family they'd built. The future they were fighting for. She let herself believe in the man who'd been forged into a weapon but had chosen to become something more. And as she drifted into sleep, safe in his arms, Amara realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the threats outside these walls. Not of the darkness that sometimes crept into their lives. Not even of losing everything they'd built. Because they'd survived worse. They'd faced down enemies and come out stronger. Together they were unstoppable. The next evening arrived too quickly. Amara sat in one of Seo-jun's SUVs, parked 2 blocks from the Gilded Lily. The vehicle's windows were tinted dark enough to be illegal, the interior filled with screens showing security feeds from inside the restaurant. Jiwoo sat beside her, weapon ready, eyes scanning the street with professional paranoia. "You okay?" the security chief asked. "Nervous," Amara admitted. "I hate not being in there." He needs to know you're safe. Otherwise, he'll be distracted. Jiwoo's voice was understanding. Trust me, I've worked for him for 8 years. I've never seen him like this, so careful, so worried about collateral damage. That's all you. On the screen, Amara watched Seojun enter the restaurant. He wore his most dangerous smile. The one that promised violence wrapped in civility. Lee was already there, seated at a center table. Visible. Making himself a target alongside Seojun. A show of unity that would either prevent war or start one. Park arrived 10 minutes later. He looked different than Amara remembered from a year ago. Thinner. Harder. Prison had carved something mean into his features. He approached the table cautiously, clearly surprised to see Seojun and Lee together. Gentlemen, he said carefully. I wasn't expecting both of you. Sit down, Park. Seojun's voice was pleasant. Terrifying. We have so much to discuss. Through the audio feed, Amara heard every word. I don't understand, Park was saying. You two should be at war. The photographs, the provocations, were orchestrated by you. Lee's tone was flat. We know. We've known since yesterday. Park's face went white. That's insane. I've been out of the game for months. Why would I? Because you're broke. Seojun leaned back in his chair. Federal seizure took everything after you testified against Chen. You're living in a studio apartment in Pilsen. Working as a paralegal for $40,000 a year. That's quite a fall from senior associate at a major firm. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. These are your financial records for the past 6 months. The gambling debts. The loan shark payments. The desperate attempts to rebuild wealth you lost. Park stared at the documents. How do you think? Seojun's smile was cold. I own this city. Did you really believe you could operate here without me knowing? You wanted us to destroy each other, Lee added. Then you'd step into the vacuum. Rebuild Chen's empire using our resources. Our territory. Our people. Park's hand moved toward his jacket. 3 things happened simultaneously. Seojun's gun appeared, aimed with casual precision. Lee's bodyguard stepped forward, weapons drawn. Anne Minji, seated at a nearby table disguised as a patron, stood with her own weapon ready. Park froze. You're going to kill me? Here. In front of witnesses? Actually, no. Seojun lowered his weapon. That would be wasteful. And I'm trying to be less wasteful these days. He nodded to Minji. He approached with a tablet. These are the terms, Seojun continued. You sign over everything. Every asset, every contact, every piece of information you have about Chen's old network. In exchange, you get to live. That's it? I just give you everything and walk away? You give us everything and disappear. Lee corrected. Out of Chicago. Out of Illinois. Preferably out of the country. You surface anywhere near our operations again and the mercy ends. Park looked between them. Trapped. Desperate. And if I refuse? Then we give the federal prosecutors evidence of your parole violations. The fraud. The conspiracy to incite gang violence. You go back to prison for 20 years minimum. Seojun leaned forward. Or worse, we leak to the old Chin loyalists that you were the one who testified against their boss. Let them handle you. The color drained from Park's face completely. You wouldn't. Test me. The silence stretched. Through the screen, Amara watched Park's face cycle through emotions. Fear. Fury. Resignation. Finally, he reached for the tablet. I want it in writing. The immunity. The protection from prosecution. Already done. Minji showed him the documents. Signed by the U.S. Attorney for Northern Illinois. All contingent on your full cooperation and permanent departure. Park read every word. Then handshaking he signed. Smart choice, Seojun said, standing. You have 72 hours to be out of Chicago. After that, the immunity expires and my people start hunting. Park stood on unsteady legs. How did you find me? How did you know? Seojun smiled. My wife is smarter than you. Smarter than me probably. She traced you in under 5 minutes. Your wife. Amara Carrington. You remember her. The witness from the restaurant. The one who saved my life while you were trying to poison me. Recognition dawned. Then her. She's the reason you're walking out of here alive, Seojun continued. She insisted we give you a chance to surrender. Otherwise, he let the threat hang. Park fled. Actually fled, stumbling through the restaurant toward the exit like death was chasing him. Which Amara supposed it had been. In the SUV she sagged with relief. It's over, Ju confirmed, speaking into her comms. Target is leaving. No shots fired. Clean resolution. Amara's phone buzzed. A text from Seojun. Coming to you. Miss you. Love you. She smiled, typing back. Love you too. Proud of you. 15 minutes later, Seojun slid into the SUV beside her. He looked exhausted. Relieved. And when he pulled her into his arms, she felt the tension finally drain from his body. It's done, he murmured against her hair. It's finally done. You did well. No violence. No bodies. Just justice. Your kind of justice. He pulled back to look at her. A year ago I would have killed him. Would have made it bloody and public and sent a message. What changed? His hand came up, cupping her face. Zoe. This life we're building. I don't want to be that man anymore. The one who solves everything with violence. You're not that man. You never really were. She kissed him softly. You were just alone. Now you're not. They drove home together, Seojun's hand never leaving hers. When they arrived, Zoe was waiting with Mrs. Park, both of them looking anxious. Did you win? Zoe asked the moment they walked in. We won, Seojun confirmed. No fighting. No danger. His living. And the bad man agreed to go away forever. That's boring. Boring is good. Amara pulled her daughter into a hug. Boring means everyone comes home safe. Later, after Zoe was asleep and Mrs. Park had retired to her suite, Amara found Seojun on the balcony overlooking the lake. He stood with his hands on the railing, staring out at the water. Thinking about the old days? She asked, moving to stand beside him. Thinking about how different everything is. He turned to look at her. A year ago my life was violence and power and loneliness dressed up as success. Now. He gestured back toward the fortress. Toward the home they'd built. Now I have a family. A wife who makes me better. A daughter who trusts me to keep her safe. A life that's about more than just surviving. His voice roughened. You gave me that, Amara. You saved more than my life that night. You saved my soul. Tears burned her eyes. You saved mine too. Gave me a place to stop running. A place to be seen. A place to build something real. He pulled her close and they stood there together watching the city lights reflect off dark water. What happens now? She asked. After Park leaves? After the threat is gone? How we live. His arms tightened around her. We build the legal center. We raise Zoe. We transform this empire into something legitimate. Something good. That's a big dream. I have big dreams now. He kissed her temple. Because I have big reasons to dream. They stayed there until the moon rose high over the lake, wrapped in each other and the future they'd fought for. Inside, their daughter slept safe and loved. Around them, the fortress stood strong. And below, the city sprawled, beautiful and dangerous and full of possibility. A year ago, Amara had spilled wine and saved a stranger. Tonight, standing in her husband's arms with their family sleeping safely nearby, she realized she'd saved herself too. Found herself in the most unlikely place. With the most unlikely person. And built a life worth protecting. Worth fighting for. Worth everything. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Seojun answered. Today, tomorrow and every day after. And somewhere in the fortress behind them, barely audible, Zoe called out in her sleep, I love you too. The sound made them both smile. This was home. This was family. This was everything neither of them had known they were missing until they found each other. And as they finally headed inside, to warmth and safety and the life they'd built from wine stains and contract negotiations and courage neither had known they possessed, Amara felt herself finally, completely, irrevocably at peace. The invisible waitress had become a visible force. The lonely crime lord had become a devoted husband and father. And together they'd transformed a fortress into a home. Full circle. Complete. Perfect. If you loved the story of Amara and Seojun, the invisible waitress who saved a Korean mafia boss with spilled wine and changed both their lives forever, make sure you hit that like button and smash that subscribe button so you never miss another dangerous love story. Drop a comment below and tell me, What was your favorite moment? Was it when Amara first spilled the wine? When Seo-jun proposed in front of everyone at the restaurant opening? Or when they took down Park together as true partners? I want to hear what made your heart race. And let me know, should I continue their story? Would you want to see them navigate parenthood when Amara gets pregnant with their second child? Or maybe a prequel about Seo-jun's past and how he became the Dragon of Soul before meeting Amara? Your comments literally shape what stories I tell next, so don't be shy. If you're new here, welcome to our dark romance family. We specialize in dangerous men, fierce women, and love stories that require trigger warnings and happy endings in equal measure. Check out the playlist for more Korean mafia romances, protective alpha males and heroines who save themselves, and sometimes save the villain too. Thank you so much for watching, for reading, for being here. Every like, every comment, every share helps us grow this community of people who believe that love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sharp, dangerous, and absolutely worth fighting for. Until next time, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers, stay dangerous, stay passionate, and remember, sometimes the most powerful love stories begin not with a grand gesture, but with a single act of courage. A spilled glass of wine. A note pressed into a stranger's hand. A choice to save someone when staying invisible would have been safer. You never know when your moment of bravery will change everything. I'll see you in the next story. Stay safe out there. Or don't. Some of the best stories start with a little danger.